All right, we got everybody here. So I'll call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, July 13th, 2020 at 6:32, I think. And we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance to start. Joe, did you get that screenshot? You want to text
That one
it?
there?
Yes, perfect. I figure this is a little bit better than standard awkward. All right, so
There we go.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
of
the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands,
one nation,
under God,
Under God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
justice for all.
justice for all.
There we go.
All right, so we have a handful.
A roll
of,
call?
Roll
One
call.
roll
All right,
call.
thank you. So members present, Sean Farrell here.
Darcy Dale here.
William Molson here.
Jamie Knutson here.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for reminding me about that, Darcy. And then we have some openings for boards and committees. We have a Council on Aging opening, Hamilton Historic District Commission 2 openings, Community Preservation Committee, we have 3 openings, but I believe one of those might be an HHDC rep and then 2 at-large members. Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust opening and Hamilton Board of Appeals opening. So we have quite a few openings. So if you're interested, please apply through the website. And now is the time for public comment. We have 3 minutes on topics that are not already on the agenda. And we'll just pause for a second and see if there's anybody else that wants to say anything. But I know Corinne is on and she'd like to say some stuff about the clerk's office. But if there's anybody else to speak, go ahead and do it now. We'll give Corinne the floor after that. All right, Corinne, I think you're up.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Corinne Kale, a 28-year resident of the town of Hamilton, and as of a week ago today, sworn in as your town clerk.
Thank
I'm
you.
absolutely thrilled and extremely nervous to be in this seat at this point in time. But I just wanted to take a minute to give you guys just a recap of the election law changes that you've been hearing about on the news or reading about in the paper. And it's very different than it was certainly in the last presidential election in 2016. So we keep hearing about vote by mail and we keep hearing about early voting. Big changes in both areas. Vote by mail is an absolute across the board, allowed for both the primary and the state election, the presidential election in November. Didn't happen that way last time. So the Secretary of State is supposed to be sending out some applications. If you've already applied for absentee or vote by mail, you don't have to do it again. Secretary of State will be generating some of those applications. And then for anybody who registers after July 1st, it will be the clerk's office that has to send those out. So in 2016, there was really no early voting for the primary. There was only 12 days for the presidential election. And we had incredible turnout for the presidential election at 80% back in 2016. So now here we are, 2020, and the vote by mail is a much broader opportunity for all voters. And early voting is greatly expanded. There was no early voting for the primary before. There will be now 7 days of early voting, including a Saturday and a Sunday. So we're going to be very busy for that. And then the state election, the presidential election, will be 14 days of early voting. In 2016, it was 12 days. It's 14 days. It must include 2 Saturdays and 2 Sundays, October 17th and 18th, and the 23rd and 24th. So it's going to be an extremely, extremely busy election season. So if you haven't registered, make sure you register. And if you want to vote by mail, please make sure you get that application. It's on the clerk's website. And if we get 80% turnout again, or even better than that, it'll be very busy. And the more people vote ahead of time, the easier it will be the day of in-person voting. So if anybody has any questions, you can contact me at ckl@hamiltonmass.gov, and I'll do my best to keep you all up to date.
Yeah, the only other thing to know is because there's so many election days, you can't schedule town events on any of those days. So something else to note. So
Yes, yes, it's really limiting, really limiting a lot, no doubt about it.
All right, that will lead into our future discussion about STM dates, no doubt.
Correct.
Corinne, can I ask you a question? You said that if we've already done early voting, we only have to do it once because,
It's a good question. If you had checked off for all elections,
Oh,
when
I
you-
see.
when you applied for that, it's still in the folder and that will go
Okay.
out. If by any chance you didn't do that, you might want to check with us or just submit another one. It's better to submit multiple times than not. But
Yes.
pass it on to your
I will.
family members and neighbors and what have you.
Thank you.
I also just want to say everybody at Town Hall has been so welcoming. It's really been, Marissa's been great and Mary Ann in my office is just unbelievable. And it's just really out across the hall has been very helpful. So yeah, it's really great. It's a great opportunity and I look forward to serving everyone.
Great. Thank you, Corinne. Joe, do you know since this is, I'm assuming it's mandated by the state and the feds, is there any kind of monies to help us with poll workers and stuff, or is that on us?
Sometimes, occasionally in the past, the state has freed up money, but I haven't had any indication of that yet. I'm sure Corinne and Sharon, who's going to still occasionally be helping out, Corinne will keep us abreast of that. We'll go after whatever the state is offering, but not usually.
Right. And if anybody else has anything to add before we move on? No. Okay. That leads us to the agenda. Or sorry, let's back up just a second. We have selectmen and town manager reports. I saw Joe sent out his town manager report just a little while ago from Pat. And let's start with Bill. Do you have anything to add?
I actually have nothing today, so you can skip me.
All right. Rosie, do you have anything to add today?
Just that there's an issue with the affordable housing units at 270 Asbury. And I do believe been working with Marty on that to try to gather more information. And I don't know what else to say about it right now, except that there is an issue with the subsidized housing inventory count of those two units. And Marnie, who is our chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, is diligently trying to find more information so that the town gets the benefit of its investment. And then there's another small issue with the Conservation Commission, but I've been in touch with members of the Concom for that, but I see that that's on the agenda for this evening, so I will leave it at that.
Perfect. Darcy.
Yes, actually, when the consent agenda comes up, I do have something to say about a minutes clarification.
Okay.
The other thing is I heard from the Kaminsky Clark family that lives at the Dodge House on Highland Street, and they said that the town's petition was in its third reading within the Senate, and
Okay.
he was asking if we on the board and Joe and anybody else who has some influence can ask Senator Tarr if he would bring it to the floor, make a motion to bring it to the floor. The deadline is the end of this month. We don't have a lot of time. The fear is if we don't make it by the deadline, it could set everybody back, and we don't want to do that. So if we can find a way to expedite this town petition and get Senator Tarr to bring it to the floor, then we have a chance of actually wrapping that whole thing up and getting it off our plate. And, I think that would be a great thing. So maybe, Joe, we could find a way.
Yeah, Joe, if you want to work with Darcy on that, that would be good.
And the other thing is, I understand that the town hall, the new town hall will have configured parking, and it's going to be, we're going to be moving back into the DPW yard to some degree, and that the DPW yard is going to need all the land that we can get back there. And it appears that there might be an issue with the cell tower taking up room that will be needed for the DPW yard. And so maybe if we could do something, see if we can come to some kind of agreement. Because I believe the varsity is now appealing in the federal court. So I just wanted to, put that on everyone's radar, that we probably need to do something about that.
Okay.
And that's about it.
All right. Jamie, do you have anything today?
I do not.
All right. So then, Joe, last but not least, you had a pretty big list of stuff.
He's on mute.
You're on mute still, Joe.
All right, there you go. Yeah, the biggest thing I wanted to bring up, I did have a bit of a town manager report. Thankfully, I'm going to be back in the habit of doing these every 2 weeks. It'll be posted online tomorrow. The first couple things I want to note were our new town clerk. Welcome her to town hall. Corinne made a good introduction of herself, so I won't belabor that point. But and also our new assistant to the town manager, community preservation coordinator, Pat Shannon. Pat's here on the call. You can see him, his smiling face. On my screen, he's in the middle on the top. He's been working hard to get up to speed, and he'll be our liaison now to the CPC, to the Affordable Housing Trust, and, well, not liaison, I shouldn't say that, coordinator for CPC, Affordable Housing Trust, and the Historic District Commission. So he'll be busy in addition to working in our office and helping to take up some of the duties that Michelle did when she was working for me. So that's a big addition to us. It's going to give us some ability to do some grant writing and things as well. So I'm very excited to have Pat here, and I wanted him to say hi, just introduce himself real quickly, if that's all right with you.
Yep, so it's nice to meet you all. See you guys all. So yeah, like Joe said, I'm gonna be working under Joe and Patrick in the CPC capacity. I actually just moved back to Massachusetts from Colorado, where I was managing special districts, some quasi-municipal governments, basically small towns within towns and counties. So a little unique, but picked up a lot of skills out there that I can bring back and hopefully help the town out with. So look forward to working with all of you, and thanks for having me.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
Welcome, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
All right, so just a couple more things. I wanted to, with this town manager report, I kind of wanted to point out to folks that although things have been a little different here the last several months, and we've been focused, rightfully so, on things related to COVID and our response to it and keeping people safe, et cetera. Work continues to go on behalf of the residents. So I chose to highlight a bunch of things from some of our department heads this week. The installation of the electronic signboard at the public safety building started today, and it's expected to be done tomorrow. This is a long-awaited project that will hopefully provide us a little more attractive way to communicate with our residents and visitors. We wanted to take a moment and recognize the retirements of 2 police officers, Sergeant Karen Wallace and Officer Brian Shaw. They both officially retired this year after serving the town for over 33 years each. That's a long time to serve the town, and we appreciate their service and wish them well in retirement. Public Works Director Tim Olson reminds residents that the Board of Selectmen recently voted to impose a water ban for sprinkling of water. Due to the drought conditions, this is a nighttime ban and requires that any plant watering be done by hand. Hamilton has also begun a joint fueling arrangement with the town of Wenham, which the board authorized back in February. Obviously, we were delayed for a number of reasons the last few months, but we have begun that here this month. And Cape Ann Transportation Authority is off to a great start in providing senior transportation through the Council on Aging for our seniors in town. There's a little more information in the town manager report when people want to read it online, but they've done a really good job reaching out to residents individually and through various other media. They've already had 7 people sign up. As of last Wednesday, a week ago, they already had 7 people sign up for the new transportation service. So we're pretty happy with that. There's also a sidewalk replacement project that is taking place. Primarily, a lot of people will see it along Linden Street down by the library, and then there's work happening on from Knowlton along School Street from Knowlton to Essex Street as well. So the work is also scheduled to be completed by mid-August. And behind Town Hall, folks might notice a new electric vehicle recharging station right up against the Public Works garage. It's there, and it's built without town funds. We secured, Vicky Massoni, I should say, secured grant funds both from DOER and through a private granting source. And that facility is now available to be used by residents who have electric cars. And the Board of Health and the Recreation Department recently worked cooperatively to reopen the town playgrounds with new signage and hand sanitizing stations. The public bathrooms at Patton Park are also open with daily cleaning, but we ask people to, follow common sense and all the guidance that they've received from local and state health officials to cut down on the spread of COVID. So those are the key highlights from my town manager's report. I'm glad to be back in the habit of doing them. It was a little bit maddening to not have the time and have us all focus so much on other things. But as you can see from that list, there was a lot going on behind the scenes that allowed things to continue to progress. So I'm very happy to be able to report on some of those things today.
Thanks, Joe. And I just have a few things myself. I meant to send it out earlier today, but I sent it out just previous to the meeting, the liaison list for everybody on the Board of Selectmen. I think pretty much everybody got what they asked for and threw in a few more extra because just to distribute it kind of evenly. And I just had a question, and we can talk about it later or now. Really, is just the Gordon Conwell task force, which was Joe's kind of baby. We don't have a rep from our board to that, and maybe we can talk to Joe later about how to restructure that or add somebody back into that.
Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to have to look at that because we've got, I want to continue the work on that that group's doing. That group was appointed by the town manager, was sunsetted June 30th, and we've had several people depart town service. So we're going to have to reappoint new people to several positions. So Dave Smith continues to work in a good faith with Dr. Sundquist up at the seminary, and I believe Dr. Sundquist is actually going to be joining the planning board meeting to answer some questions for the planning board folks this week. So that's all good news. But yeah, I'll get some input from you folks about how I can go about repopulating the Gordon Conwell Seminary Task Force.
And the other question I had on it, we had previously 2 representatives for the Town Hall Building Committee. And I think that's a 9-member board. And right now I have Darcy and Rosie on it. And I didn't know if we still wanted 2 representatives on there or if we only wanted 1, and we can discuss that and maybe even, and Joe, forgive me, because I can't remember, is the 2 people from our board, are they voting members of that board or are they just the liaison to that board?
I'm going to double check that with Patrick. I believe they're only supposed to be liaison members, but I don't want to say that for sure. Obviously, the board was organized by my predecessor, and the membership's changed a little bit here and there over time. I'll confirm that with Patrick and Tim, and see if you need both members or if one will suffice.
Yeah, and
I don't remember that I don't remember that I voted, but a lot of the meetings were during the day, like 2 or 3 o'clock. So, but I don't remember that we actually voted on much. We mostly discussed and debated, but check into that, Joe.
Yeah, and I would say if it's a non-voting member, I'm fine with both of you ladies being the liaisons to it, or you guys can arm wrestle over it, because right now I think Darcy has 1 more assignment than Rosie does. And if Darcy, you dropped off of that liaison role, then everyone would be even with assignments. But it's up to you guys, and we'll find out with Joe if it's a voting member or not, and then we can discuss it again, if that's all right. Also, I got a notice that the governor has rescinded his plastic bag order. If you've been to Crosby's or any local businesses lately, they give you kind of what I call the liquor store bag, the black bag, instead of letting you use your reusable bag or paper bags. So I reached out to Joe today and let him know that. And I think David Smith will be talking to the local businesses to say we're going back to our plastic bag ban, as soon as possible. If not,
he already started. He started with Crosby's, and in connection with that, the governor today, or the Department of Public Health rather, today also announced that the order to not use reusable bags has been lifted as well. So all of us like me who had spent over the last couple of years, tens of dollars on buying reusable bags and was miffed that I had to leave them in my trunk, we can go back to using those again. They'll be available for us again at Shaw's and wherever we shop. So that's good news. But David did get back to me right away this morning, Sean. He's already reached out to Crosby's and he intends to contact any store in town that was using the bags.
Great. And then kind of on that same vein, our every other week trash pickup, we should discuss again coming up when to rescind our every week or whatever discussion we want to have with it. And in kind of anticipation of, I'm going to guess, by previous decisions of the board that we'll move back to every other week. But I also reached out to our waste reduction committee and asked them if they were willing to do some kind of town hall or informal Zoom sessions on composting and trash and recycling so that we had more of a public forum for it. Because when I often looked at Facebook, people are always kind of amazed at what they can and can't put in their compost. And so I think if that board did a couple kind of information sessions, it would be helpful to the citizens. And also we could have a link to it on our website and it would serve as an informational kind of a thing for people to refer to. So that's kind of to be determined when they'll do that and if they'll do that, but I would assume they will because they want to help out. Also, just circling back on the liaison list, once you get the list and you reach out to your board chairs and stuff like that, I think Joe sent a board chair list, or Pat did, with our packet. And if not, I'll send it out again. I can't remember if it was in there or not, but I would reach out to those chairs, let them know you're the liaison, and ask them about the appointments when we discussed it last time, if people were willing to continue the service until September, and if they wanted to be reappointed, to let us know. We could work on that. Also, the Community Preservation Committee has to do an annual public hearing. In the last few years, we've done it as a joint meeting with them for like the first half an hour, 40 minutes of one of our meetings. And they're coming up on that deadline. And I was thinking if our agenda wasn't too heavy, our next meeting for the 27th, we could do a joint meeting in the beginning with the CPC and they could do their presentation of all their projects and grant stuff. So keep that on your radar. And then another joint meeting coming up, and I think I emailed about this already, was maybe a joint meeting with the school committee on August 12th. And if I didn't email it out, forgive me because I meant to. Did I email it?
Yes,
You
you
did.
did.
Yes, you
Okay,
did.
I put it on my calendar.
Okay, good. So, and we'll get back to about agenda and stuff like that when I talk to Michelle Bailey and everybody there and kind of coordinating our agendas before that meeting. But I think that's really good, and it shows a step in the communications effort that we'd like to have moving forward with them. What else? And I sent Joe a link to this, but I didn't send it to everybody else, but I can if you'd like. There is some cybersecurity Zooms coming up where they're talking about cybersecurity for towns and municipalities. And I was thinking that one of us or Joe or some representative could watch one of these Zooms, and it's basically talking about securing all your data and stuff like that. I know that we're going to be moving to all digital records here with the town hall renovations, and it's be key to protect our data from ransoms. And then lastly, our solar array at the landfill. From what I hear, and Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is held up in land court with the title. And then I heard that maybe the end of July, they'd be moving on it to put the stamp on it and we can move forward to getting some energy.
Yeah, they were waiting for some documentation from the land court to do something with the closing. The details escape me. They were all set. They were starting to do this and clear this and clear the way in March, and then like everything else, land court closed down. Our attorneys recently reached out to the land court, and their response was that they try to have it done by the end of July. So hopeful, but that's gonna finally happen.
And then just one last thing, I had a meeting with Joe and Patrick today, a phone conference with Everest and the FCC discussing the cell phone tower, I guess, projected timeline. And so it was a good meeting. I think everyone got out their statements. Mass Historical Council was there. Our HDC had Scott, the chair, there as well. We kind of put everything out on the table, and the FCC members that were there were going to kind of get back to us on next steps of the process. So look forward to some more information on that in the next coming weeks. And that's it for me. And then the agenda we'll just start with the first one. And Darcy, you can just shout out which one you have an issue with. So the first is approved minutes of the May 5th, 2020 and June 29th, 2020 Board of Selectmen meetings. So I'll take a motion in a second, and then Darcy can add, if it's on this one, what you need to change.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and Darcy, was it this one or?
Yeah, this is page 5 of the May 18th. Is that on the?
That's the next one.
Okay. Oh, so I'll wait until we get to the May 18th, I guess, or do you want me to take it up now?
Let's do it in a second, since we've already motioned and seconded. So unless anybody has any changes to these 2 minutes, we'll take a vote. Any discussion on them? No? Okay. So roll call vote. We'll start with Bill.
William Olson, aye.
Jamie.
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy.
Darcy Dale, aye.
Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
And Sean Farrell, aye. All right, and the next set, approve the minutes of the May 18th, 2020 Joint Board of Selectmen and Finance Advisory Committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and page 5, something, Darcy, go ahead.
Let's see, page 5 of the joint minutes. And it's the paragraph that begins, Mr. Wanger said, pertaining to the discussion of whether the school's budget article should be split into 2 articles. He can share the summary of what the FinCom had recommended. So the part that needs to be clarified is the FinCom vote was 4-1 in favor of having 1 article rather than the split, with himself as the dissenter.
Dissenter.
Yes. And that's the correction. Clarification, rather.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that. Joe, you taking that down? You're on mute.
He's muted.
He's swearing right now.
Yeah. Still muted.
Joe?
Sorry, I got that. Mary Alice is on too, so between Mary Alice and I will get that straightened out today.
Oh, perfect. There's Mary Alice. I see her on too. Okay. We'll call the vote for approval with the changes.
William Olson, aye.
Bill Olson, Darcy.
Darcy Dale, aye.
Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Jamie.
Jamie Knutson, aye.
And Sean Farrell, aye. All right, and next we have the end of year transfers review and vote, and I assume either Marissa or Joe will speak to this. I think there's just 2. Is that right, Marissa?
It is just 2, and that's what Marissa's here for. So
that is correct. There's only 2 this year, so it's actually pretty clean. But just to give you a little background, I know that every year I come to in front of the Board of Selectmen to have these transfers approved. These transfers are allowed between May 1st and July 15th, and they need FinCom and Board of Selectmen approval. These are transfers that cannot be covered within their own department, so any interdepartmental or between functions, I should say, we need the BOS and the FinCom approval. So last Wednesday, the FinCom approved both of these transfers. And usually we have a lot more, but as you know, because we had put some expenditure freezes on, there's only 2 of them. And the first one is to fund cherry sheet assessment expenditures. And we do have funds available in the retirement fund account. So we're asking to transfer $6,433 into the cherry sheet assessment expense line item. And then item number 2, again, is related to an assessment. This is actually now the library operating expenses. We get a library assessment, and then in turn, we actually give it to to Wyndham because they're in charge of the library. And there was a small discrepancy with the actual assessment and what we had estimated at the time of our budget. And that's $448.94. Any
So
questions?
moved.
Does anybody have any questions on that? Any second? Did I get a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. I don't know if there's much discussion. It seems pretty straightforward, like you said, Marissa. So I'll call the vote unless anybody's got an issue with it. No? Okay. So we'll start with Bill.
William Wilson, aye.
Jamie?
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy?
Darcy Dale, aye.
Rosie?
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
And Sean Farrell, aye. Thank you, Marissa. That was easy.
Thank you. That was very easy. Hopefully there's no more transfers for this year. We actually just had our last FY20 warrant that we were wrapping up today. So I'll have a better idea of how we ended up the year probably in a week or so. The departments still have until the 15th to request for any encumbrances for invoices that they haven't received. And we're just finalizing our receipts, but it looks like we're not going to meet our revenue estimates. So, but I can provide you with a better update, more details in probably a week or a couple of weeks once we start finalizing some of these numbers. But as of right now, it doesn't look like we'll meet our revenue expectations, but it does look like we'll have some savings in our appropriations.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Marissa.
All right, Marissa.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item is the cable license renewal. And then the item after that is the community house parade and play. I was wondering if it was okay with the board if we flip those two around just so we could, I don't think the community house is going to take too long. So if that's all right with everybody.
Yeah, proceed.
Yes.
All right, so up next, we'll have the community house parade and play. And I don't see Melissa on, but I see some other folks from the community house. And maybe you can just speak up and let us know who you are and tell us about it.
Right. Amy Wallach is the chairman of the parade, and I'm Gail, the event manager at the community house. I know some of you, but Amy's going to be speaking, and then Katie's going to be speaking about the theater.
Perfect. Thanks, Gail.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. So, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to add us to your agenda. So, as everyone knows, with our current state of affairs, we were not able to have our annual block party down at Patton Park. So, the board, I currently sit on the board of directors for the community house. We were kind of brainstorming and trying to come up with alternatives to create a safe community event for both communities, both Hamilton and Wenham. And so we have come up with a kind of rolling block party, if you will. So it's really a more of a parade. So we have a tentative, we do have a tentative kind of parade route. And Gail, was that sent over prior to?
I didn't send it. I thought you were going to. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't know who to send it to. I apologize because we had some materials for you guys to review, which was essentially, I could send it to someone now if you guys would like. But our proposed date is August 29th with a rain date of August 30th. And the time that we were shooting for was from 3 to 7. It is a large period of time. Oh, Katie, do you have it? Could you screen share it? Phenomenal. I apologize. So that is a wider time frame, but it's all going to be kind of based on the route. The route that we created, it does start in, our goal would be to start, our initial thought would be to start over at Gordon College on that side of Wenham, make our way through Hamilton and then back through Wenham. And the goal of it is to kind of try to hit as many of the neighborhoods as we can to still keep everybody socially distanced, but make it so that everybody can actually kind of enjoy the parade as it does go by. We would kind of circle back around and end. It would be more of a disbursement point, and that would be the library, not a stopping point, because we're not looking to have people congregate. And so our thought was, I believe that as we're at right now, it would be 5 different floats. I have been in contact with both the Hamilton and Wenham police departments to have participation from the police and fire departments as well. We have 3 antique cars that would be a part of the parade. So these, we would have a DJ, the Music Man, who is, one of our kind of regular events that we offer at the community house. And so that is our thought. So we do kind of need, there we go.
Thanks, Katie.
So what I did was I kind of mapped it out. I know it looks very lengthy, but we went back and forth with a couple of route options. This was kind of where we came back around where we thought we would hit the most neighborhoods. We also took some feedback from the Colts, who did their kind of rolling little, kind of rolling block party, if you will. I believe it was 2 months ago with the DJ, where they went around. So we took Barb has been helping us with that. We took some feedback from her and where they saw the most people in the neighborhoods and just kind of expanded it a little bit from there. And so this was kind of the route that we came up with. And we figured that this would be a good starting point to get some feedback from you guys and kind of take it from there.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I think that was successful, the previous one that was sort of thrown together quickly, and it was still very successful. So whatever we can do to help,
Awesome.
let us know how we can help you guys and what you're looking for in terms of community help or volunteers or et cetera. So I mean, that's what,
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
I think we're going to approve it, but it's more if you guys let us know how we can help.
Well, so I do actually have one kind of thought, but I'd love to bounce off you guys. So, if we are going to successfully be able to cover this territory, which we do think that we could do, but, the one concern would be bathroom breaks. So with the route, and I have a direct contact at Gordon that I'm working with. If in the event that we can't start at Gordon College, which I wanted to see, what your feedback was, and if this was to get approved before I really went back to meet with them, the alternative would be we could start at the high school if kind of just staging and starting in one of the Gordon parking lots was not an option. So the way the route's set up, we were thinking if we could take a brief break at Patton, we could utilize the restrooms at the community house. And I'm not sure if the restrooms at Patton Park are open or if we might be able to use them. And what we would do is we'd divide it based on the number of cars, floats, and participants, and people would be assigned to go to one or the other so that we're breaking people up. They can line up, socially distant, if you will. That was kind of the best option I could come up with. I guess I could say.
Yeah, no, I mean,
giving people a bathroom break.
It's a legitimate logistical challenge. Yeah, so
just tough.
yeah. So right now it's 20. It's about 19 miles. I mean, that's all my only concern. It looks like it's what 19 miles, right? So, and I understand you're trying to hit all the neighbors. I just be concerned that might be a little sort of long, but as a sort of.
Well, I mean, initial feedback from the police departments was like, "Wow, you're getting aggressive," and I was like, "I'm just trying to make sure everyone that can get involved that can be." And
it's good to be inclusive. It just seems it might be challenging to be that long.
So we're gonna have to kind of refine some things, and both police departments have been, they're like, we could do a Zoom meeting to kind of coordinate things with them. Obviously, things like we only cross the tracks, I believe, once, so we have to take into consideration the train. But then obviously traffic, what they'd like to see if we need police details. So there's additional facets with them outside of just trying to get them to participate in it as well. But they've been great so far. I just will need to circle back around with them after tonight.
What time you're going to be starting the kind of parade? Did you have 3? That's okay.
We didn't want to do it too early in the afternoon because it could be really hot out.
Yeah.
So we were hoping for later afternoon.
Right, especially if people are on the floats for extended time, etc.
Right.
And so we do have like 2 or 3 committed sponsors as well, which is great. We're going to kind of take that from there. But The other thing was that since Labor Day falls so late this year, we were kind of thinking that this would be a nice way to kind of, without it being on Labor Day weekend, kind of round out the summer, if you will, as we head into fall. So that's kind of where we came up with that weekend.
All right. Anybody else on the board besides Bill have any questions or opinions?
My opinion, I think it's just a super idea, and I'm 100% supportive. I'm like Bill. I'm just a little concerned about the length of it. It just, I just think about, as you had mentioned, traffic backups and things like that. So, and I appreciate your philosophy of wanting to be as inclusive as possible. Had you given any thoughts to maybe just truncating it a little bit? It just seems like a really long route.
So I actually do have about 5 or 6 other parade route
Oh, you
options.
do? Okay.
All in this,
Just in case.
I found this great website where I could just kind of
Yeah, it's
go
very
along.
cool.
Yeah.
And so, and the biggest stretch relative to traffic is going to be that 1A.
Yeah.
1A stretch. And so with the one that you're looking at, that's that would bring us, we'd be coming down Sagamore to.
I mean, the high school, the high school graduation parade route was great. I mean, that was 300 or 400 cars, and it was a long route, but it went very. So that worked out pretty well in 1A. That
But
was
if,
you know.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
and,
if you're
and that will
going,
be, this will be less impact, I think, than the high school
Right.
graduation one for
Right.
sure.
well,
So
it's going from Moulton to Bay all the way down to Maine and Monument. So that's about that part of it is almost about what the high school parade was, wouldn't you say? Yeah. So I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
wonder.
how many
I
vehicles
wonder if we could. I don't want to say leave it up to, but I think in their talks with public safety from Wenham and Hamilton, I think those guys are very good at when I've done events in the past with my wife used to do the Fast Chicks 5K race and stuff like that, and would figure out the run routes. They were always very good about suggestions, saying, "Ooh, you don't want to do that. You'd rather do this." And so I would say they're probably the best experts on this. And if you haven't gotten input from them yet, I would make sure that you get some input from them. Maybe even show the public safety people on you if you do a Zoom call with kind of both entities, the different routes you're thinking about, and then and they'll help you pick the best option.
Yeah, so that was kind of our plan. I mean, truth be told, we're like, all right, this would be the biggest parade route we could do. Let's start there and let's shave it down, if you will. And like I said, I have been in contact with both departments, and I figured it would be good to make sure that we could actually proceed with the idea, and kind of get some feedback from you guys, and then circle back around with them to try to tighten up that route from there.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think with Bill's comments earlier, I think it's a great idea. I think it's going to be really positive for everybody involved that participates. And I think the only thing I would have, my kind of one caveat, is that, I mean, I would say we could approve the request tonight, pending any input from our public safety officials. Let them have the ultimate call on the route and the timing and stuff, because they're going to be the ones out there stopping traffic and directing people and stuff like that.
That'd be great.
That's awesome. And I already have a certificate of insurance for both Hamilton and Wenham.
Perfect.
Naming, yeah, so I have that already.
Really quick though, just to circle back, any thoughts on the whole bathroom thing?
On the what?
The Patton Park bathrooms?
Patton Park bathrooms are open.
They were open, yeah.
They opened this past week, so.
Yeah.
You weren't on it yet, Amy.
That's great.
Yeah, so that should help a little bit, but along the route, you might even think about, once you get your route established, just renting a couple of porta potties along some part of the way, and if some homeowner lets you put them out front for a day or two, they're relatively inexpensive to rent for a day or two. Might be an option.
Johnny volunteering.
No.
Any volunteers?
Just trying to think outside the box a little bit.
No, we had thought about that as well.
Maybe rent an RV.
So do we need to come back to you after we talk to the public service people about the route? Do you want us to come back to you with what the route's going to be?
Maybe just for informational purposes.
Yeah, I think maybe just an update of your route to Joe and stuff like that, so the board knows and everybody's on the same page. But I don't think you need to come back for approval unless anybody else thinks differently.
No, I don't. My recommendation is to cut it in half, make it like 10 miles. I think is probably the right distance, the right time frame.
Yeah,
But my
and-
question, yes,
and
but
maybe
I
even-
think we can approve it tonight with, and then you guys just work on the route and just come back to us. But I think we can approve it. But the other question was just in terms of people want to get involved or help you out or be in the parade. Why don't you just tell people how they can get a hold of you or how that works, if that's an option?
Yeah. I would be, if there's anybody that would like to help or get involved, they can reach out to me directly or to Gail. I can send, you know what, I could actually put my contact info in the chat.
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
And Joe knows how to get a hold of me.
I know how to get a hold of Gail.
Yeah.
For you again.
Many times in his office, right?
So while we're getting the chat updated, if anybody wants to make a motion for approval, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve the Hamilton, the community house request for rolling parade on 8/29 with a rain date of 8/30.
Could we add pending approval of our fire and police?
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Pending approval of our fire and police.
All right,
Second.
there's a second. All right, perfect. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, we'll start with Bill.
William Olson, aye.
Jamie,
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy,
Darcy Dale, aye.
Rosie,
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Sean Farrell, aye.
Don't forget about the theater request too.
Yeah,
for
I was
the
just going to
music.
say, and then the
Yeah.
next part of that is the stage 284 request for I think the gazebo or the park for a kind of a socially distanced concert, I guess.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you. And Stage 284 is excited about the rolling block party and to work with Amy and Gail. So thanks for having all of us. So when COVID-19 hit, we were one day away from opening, which you may know as it's my favorite childhood movie and book, but it's a musical. And so we would like to propose a socially distanced concert in Patton Park September 12th or the 13th as a rain date. I did speak with someone from the Hamilton Town Hall, and I cannot remember his name. He was lovely, and he helped me come up with some health code.
David Smith.
Yes, yes, to help me figure out what how far audience and singers should be. So my other job is that I work at Endicott College. I'm the coordinator of theater there, and we've been doing a lot of research on how to keep our spaces safe. And a socially distanced concert seems like the safest way to do theater at this moment, just based on how the human body works and projecting, etc. So he suggested, as well as Endicott has suggested to me, that we keep all of our performers 12 feet apart. There'd be no more than 4 people performing at one time, and that they'd also be 12 feet away from the audience, and that all audience members be 6 feet apart. So if you're a family, you can come and sit with your family, but you need to be 6 feet away from another group. And then we would be able to rope these spaces out with cones and rope so that they're very clear about where you should be to enjoy the concert socially distanced. Each person would have their own microphone, so we're not sharing microphones, and all of the music would be done either just piano, or if we need more wind instruments that involve using breath, that we would pre-record those tracks so that you'd be playing them while the singers sing along instead of having that whole live band element. The performance is a suggested donation to the scholarship fund. So you could do, instead of doing transactions for tickets, we'd have that available online, or buckets that you could drop a donation in. And I think that's it. Oh, the other thing is that we'd probably use, just like at the block party, we usually post, we do like posts on the ground, like this is where you set up your tent. This is where you do this, so that we would post out the area that we are using for the audience and the performance, just so that other park goers know where they should be walking or not walking during that time. The timing of the performances, we have 2 different casts, so we want to do 2 different shows. So there would be an earlier performance and an evening performance with a 30-minute window in between, in order for droplets to settle and for us to clean up any anything that might be left over from the previous audience. So that's.
Can I ask you a question? Will the audience be required to wear masks?
They are required to wear masks, especially getting to their spot. And we can require them, whatever you think, to wear them while they're sitting there. I would as an audience member, but we can definitely make that a requirement. You have to wear your mask to get to your spot.
David Smith would be able to help you with that. He's the chair.
I talked to David. Yes.
I would say, this is a little bit different than the parade. It's a little trickier per se, but I think if you're working closely with our health department and David, who's helped you before, and maybe even a day of type of inspection from someone from our health department to make sure everything's copacetic, I think it'd be a great thing. As long as we do it right and we're careful about it. And I think the only kind of one thing that I would say is, if there is some spike in cases in Hamilton or surrounding areas, that we kind of reserve the right to talk to you and mutually agree to cancel the event if we need to.
Definitely. Yes.
Katie, I had a thought about sort of roping off areas instead of, and I saw this, I don't know, maybe it was on Facebook or something, but if you put chalk circles where each group should sit, that will be a nice boundary, instead of just a marker that could be moved. If you put a physical circle with chalk, that would be a good boundary for people, and you could put larger or smaller if it's a bigger group or a smaller group. So just a suggestion.
That's awesome. I hadn't heard of that. Thank you.
They do that in Germany.
I would say, so in addition to kind of working with David
saw
Smith in the health department, and work with Joe and Tim Olson, our DPW director, or maybe even Sean Timmons, our Parks and Rec person, to kind of coordinate a little bit before the event to figure out what's best. Unless there's any other discussion, someone could make a motion.
Well, I will make this motion too then. So tell me the name of the, could I just say a concert?
Yeah, it's stage 284 concert.
Okay, so I move that the Hamilton Board of Selectmen approve a request by stage 284 / Community House to hold a concert at Patton Park on September 13th with a rain date of, September 12th with a rain date of September 13th.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, we'll start with Bill.
William Olson, aye.
Jamie.
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Darcy.
Dale, aye.
And Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
And myself, Sean Farrell, aye. Thank you, everybody. And thanks. We got Melissa right at the tail end of it. Hi, Melissa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good luck with all the planning.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's kind of a little different now, but you know how we normally do our annual harvest dinner in October? We can't do it this year the way we normally do because of the virus, but we're going to do a virtual harvest dinner. And the theme of it is honoring hometown heroes. And we're looking for people, any of you, to donate, to recommend somebody who is a hero. It could be a child that sold lemonade to raise money, or someone who made masks, or a nurse that was in the front line, a fireman, a Cord food pantry. There's many, many possibilities of people that you could nominate as a hometown hero. And I just thought I'd put that out there to all of you. And if you nominate somebody, let them know that you nominated them, because they, in fact, may have somebody they might want to nominate. So we're hoping this will be a big event. It's going to be virtual. Tim Hopkins is doing the food. It's going to be pickup food to take home, and want to have a program. So it will be quite nice. It will be different.
All right. Is there a deadline on nominations, Gail?
On mute.
Gail, you went silent. Gail, we lost you.
The nomination period is through the remainder of this week.
Perfect.
Since we kind of, yeah, so through the 19th, which is that
Or anybody.
actually through Sunday, I believe it's, we just got an email about it today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, so through the, yep, they'll remain open until the 19th, so submit your nominations.
Yep. You can submit more than one. We just really are looking forward to making this fun and honoring people that really helped out.
All right.
There's
Thank you
no
so-
limit to the number of people that can be recognized. So that's why we're pushing for so many nominations. We want to recognize as many people as possible who've contributed.
That's great, Melissa. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so
everybody.
much for everything. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, good luck.
Yep, thanks. We'll be in touch.
And now we'll go back to our previous item that we did talk about, the Verizon cable license renewal. We have a presentation by Bill August, who's joining us today in tropical somewhere.
Bill Melville is also here from HWCAM to answer questions as well.
Tropical virtual background. I wish that I could say we were at our satellite office in Hawaii, but
right.
Virtual background. Hi, everybody. Bill August. I have represented Hamilton for many, many years. I did the 2015 Comcast renewal. 10 years prior to that, I did the Hamilton license renewal, also at that time with Comcast. The last time around, I worked extremely closely with Bill Melville, who's here somewhere. Bill, hi. And so, you know, I think I can add a lot of value cost effectively based on already having a familiarity and knowledge base, and also based on Bill Melville knowing and working incredibly effectively with some of our methodologies in terms of preparation of the findings and the record that make for a strong and credible renewal negotiations process with Verizon. So in addition to the experience with Hamilton, which is substantial, and with the Hamilton Wenham two-town community television access corporation, I do have very substantial municipal cable law experience. I'm a fairly regular speaker at the Mass Municipal Lawyers Association on cable and telecom and 5G and right-of-way management matters that go into utility and cable regulation. I've represented over 75, 80 municipalities in the last 20 years. Bill knows me. I'm like one of the 2 or 3 most active municipal attorneys in this space. So I was previously general counsel of the state agency that oversees cable licensing, and I was it was under the Executive Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation, which was the then umbrella for utility regulation, cable, banking, insurance. It had about 7 or 8 regulated industries, and I was general counsel in what was then a very small but a very active cable office, because we were promulgating the rules on licensing when I got started with that. It's since been subsumed into the Department of Telecommunications and Cable and is a bigger agency. So I have the experience generally. I remain very active in this area. I love this area because it is really a great area of municipal and public interest law. It's the media, it's information technology. As we see with COVID-19, this infrastructure, our telecommunications, and our having good technology, it's just like shines the light on how important it is, like this Zoom meeting. And the cable companies have delivered the bandwidth and the speed and have been pretty resilient in sustaining the delivery of all this intensified telecommunications activity. So it grows in importance. And just as the overall infrastructure has grown in importance, so has on the local level, these community studios that when we started, they were like little startups. Like, oh, there's the little local studio. It was kind of interesting and experimental innovation. And they've really become vibrant, more central parts of the communities as the newspapers have dwindled. And as people became aware of these local channels, these channels are now the go-to place for municipal meeting coverage in many communities. They're the go-to place for community events, for high school sports. They are a key player, and the demand for their services grows in importance. The cable license renewal determines the funding and the infrastructure available to the local community channels. And you would think, oh, well, we've done this before. There's not much to it. It just gets more complicated over time. Just in the last 3 years, the FCC has really mucked up the regulatory process. They have brand new rules. And Bill, you're familiar with the in-kind benefit rules. The FCC woke up about 2 and 3 years ago and issued a whole new set of rules on what you count and don't count towards the franchise fee that the cable company has to pay you. So if we negotiate 5% of gross revenues as the revenue stream to support the community, the FCC completely changed the way the 5% is calculated. And it has a lot. So that's why I say it's nothing boilerplate about the renewal process now. Some of the interconnections with the school buildings are counted towards the 5%. Some aren't, depending on whether the expenses are classified as capital or operating. Some of the access channel expenses, not just the monetary support, is counted towards the 5%. So there are new rules. There's like an 80-page order on it. And
right. we got some of that. Sorry to interrupt you, Bill, but we got, I think, the meat and potatoes of it today in an email. It's quite a lot to sift through. Right. So maybe you can kind of speak towards.
Sure.
And I remember from 2015 when you helped us with our last negotiation.
Right.
And I think we talked about if maybe you can give us a general overview of kind of where we are, what the process is, and what we're looking to negotiate. Because I think last time we had negotiated another channel, and we had talk where they didn't want to give us a channel, but we ended up getting a channel and some more monies from the percentage and stuff. So you can kind of speak to that. I think
someone has a very good memory here. Wow. The overview of the process, conceptually, it's very easy in that the first phase is called ascertainment of needs. So the Cable Act section on renewal says the town has to identify its cable-related needs. So we will go into a process of identifying needs. And in that process, we invite the public, and we have to have a public hearing to get feedback from the public. We have to listen to you, the licensing authority, the Board of Selectmen, about their identification of needs. And we don't have a long process because the Verizon license expires in May of 2021. That's less than a year to ascertain needs, promulgate an ascertainment report, and then go into negotiations with Verizon, which is not a small entity. I mean, they have like armies of lawyers and corporate requirements. And then from the negotiations, go through the back and forth of drafting, a 60-page. So the phases are overview, ascertainment of needs, promulgating some type of written document reporting those needs or findings. Because if you sit down in negotiations with Verizon, they will say, how can we negotiate? Where is your report on needs?
Right. And Bill Melville, have you started any of this legwork for needs and ask for them?
Yes, I was given a template from a community that just signed a cable license with Verizon. So I've been looking at that and picking out things that I think are valuable that I could use. And I'm also referring back to the 2015 ascertainment document that I created for the Comcast license.
Good.
Sean, just to bring everybody up to speed too, this process started a number of weeks ago. We had a joint meeting with Mr. August, Mr. Melville. Wenham's attorney in this license renewal is Bill. His last name's forgetting me. Bill Solomon, and Anthony and I, and we talked about it because obviously the attorneys can't represent HWCAM as HWCAM is the beneficiary, so they represent the town's interests, and then we'll be able to pay them through the whatever settlements negotiated with Verizon. So the funds to pay for the attorneys will actually come from the negotiated settlement and won't come from town general fund revenues or anything like that.
Right, that's a good point to make.
But you today have to kind of sign off on the services of Mr. August to work on the town's behalf in this cable license renewal, so that he can continue to work with Bill and Mr. Solomon to move that along. And I believe, Bill August, you said that we need to start with the ascertainment process here at the end of July and August,
Right.
with some public hearings and things. So
right, and I reached out to Bill Melville to give him samples of some of the capital plan budgets, because that's one of the big battlegrounds, to get that started, even if we're not hired, just so he could get the ball rolling and be prepared. Then we reduce that to ascertainment findings. Then we get into negotiations. The most of the financial package is the annual support for local facilities, which can be public, educational, governmental. It's recommended to have, by the way, now, since last time around, there have been recommendations that the town should also have a separate contract with the Access Corporation, which is a whole other issue, and which Joe and I talked about a little bit. There are new Department of Revenue requirements about which some towns did on their own anyhow, but in 2018, Department of Revenue required a town meeting warrant article approving the overall expenditure, not each line item, in the use of cable funds. So that's why I was saying there's a lot more going on this time around than there was last time around in terms of just regulation and legal complexity. But the basic concepts are very simple. We have to ascertain needs, which is a listening process. We do our homework. Needs, the video related needs, because we're regulating video cable services, not the internet or telephone. That's sort of beyond the scope of the license itself. So I'm open to, there's a lot that goes into that, because like within Access, the old license, by the way, Verizon license was 15 years.
Yeah.
Verizon refuses. They'll put their hand on the Bible and swear they will never sign a license longer than 5 years right now. So it's a very different world. The old one was 15 years. They have not signed a single license longer than 5 years, which is a pain in the neck,
right?
Because it means it expires in another 5 years.
Right.
We can now negotiate an HD PEG channel, so the PEG channels, the local channels, can be more competitive with commercial high def. That was not an option the last time around with either Verizon or Comcast. Now it's an option with both. So there are new things to go for. Verizon has some very tricky level playing field language, saying that if any video providers are authorized by the town and give the town less than Verizon gives, then Verizon can crank down to the lower level of what the competition does. And that's a real area of risk. So, and we know some of how far Verizon will go to narrow that risk, and they know we know, so we can save you, and they know we know how to do that. So we sort of have a little dance where we get to the best possible model in terms of reducing how much they can go down through a level playing field clause. So, you know, we think we know we can add a lot of value. We're all learning this area as we go, because the FCC is still promulgating further rules on the franchise fee calculation. So in the sense that a lot is changing, you know, we're humble about it. It's evolving. The high def technology is evolving. But you know, we keep abreast of it and work with you collaboratively and with other municipalities collaboratively. It's really a team process.
Mr. Chair, may I make a motion?
Yes, please.
I would like to make a motion that we initiate Verizon cable license renewal process.
And then Joe, do we need to add the stipulation of bringing on Mr. August?
Yes, I would. I would suggest that you add to that you're gonna you want to move to approve of the contract terms that were forwarded by Mr. August to you all, to have him come on as the town's representation in this matter.
So moved.
All right, a second.
Second.
Second by Rosie. All right. I don't know if there's any more discussion. I think Mr. August has pretty much said it all and then some. And Mr. Melville, we'll be working with you and Mr. August kind of with our list of asks from Verizon and Mr. August, refresh my memory. Does Verizon kind of come when it comes to negotiations with what their offer is, and then we go back to them and say, listen, we want the HD channel, we want a little more of your percentage and whatnot? Is that how the process went last time with Comcast?
Usually we sit down together with Verizon and the town's representative, the town manager, Bill Melville as a liaison, any members of the selectmen who want to be present, and lay out what our priorities are, including, you know, what we are asking for in terms of the annual funding, and then the equipment funding, which is above and beyond the annual funding,
right?
And including the HD channel, and letting them know right up front the kind of level playing field and some of the other administrative revisions. Then they send us a first draft reflecting that.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. So I'll call the vote. Bill Olson.
William Olson, aye.
Darcy.
Darcy Dale, aye.
Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Jamie.
Jamie Knutson, aye.
And myself, Sean Farrell, aye. Thanks, Bill and Bill.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, great seeing you. Take
Yeah,
care.
good
And
seeing
I'm
you. Let us know what we.
very informal. Feel free, you know, either through Joe or however you want to work it, just to call and touch base. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. And then up next, we have the review and vote of the conservation restriction for Canterbrook Farms. And Joe or Rosie or even George Tar can chime in at any point and kind of kick this off. I know most of the details of it, but I know Rosie and George, you guys are more involved in the kind of nuts and bolts, and George, you on the Concom probably know more than most.
Yep, I would think that George should be our
George, you
point
want to
man.
kick us off then on what we're talking about tonight then?
May I make a suggestion? Technically, it's been before the Concom. I definitely think George and Rosie need to talk, as has been illustrated. But normally, I think the normal course would be to let the proponent speak to why they're here, have a quick say. This is something we want to have addressed, and then I know George and Rosie have.
Oh, that's right. Is it Larry that's on for?
Larry and his attorney is Melissa Ogden, I believe.
Okay. So if you guys want to go talk, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go over top of you there, but go ahead and
That's okay.
and tell us what you'd like.
Good morning, or good evening, rather. My name is Melissa Ogden. I'm an attorney at Mann & Mann, and I'm here representing Canterbury Capital, who will be granting the conservation restriction to the Hamilton Conservation Commission, or to the town of Hamilton through the Conservation Commission. This conservation restriction was required as part of our approval for the Canterbury condominium on Highland and Asbury Streets. And we have gone through the process with the state, with the Executive Office Environmental, and we're here to ask for your approval of the Conservation Commission's acceptance of the conservation restriction.
All right. And so if someone wants to make a motion, then we can discuss it and hear Rosie and George's input.
Do that.
So moved.
All right. Do I have a second? Thanks, Darcy.
Second.
All right. Bill seconded it. Okay. George or Rosie, do you guys want to speak to this?
George,
Sure. I
why
think
don't
we
you
know
please?
what the problem I saw was, and I regret that I didn't pull it up at the Conservation Commission meeting. Basically, what we were told that the meeting conflicts with the conservation restriction. We were told at the meeting that the public would have access. The conservation restriction doesn't say that at all. It doesn't grant the public access. In fact, it doesn't clearly say the public has to stay out either. But I think reading what it does say implies that the public is not welcome. And I think it should be revised so that the residents of Hamilton are free to go there. It would take a very simple insertion of a few words at one point in the document to fix that. There's no major rewrite or anything like that involved.
No, and I think
there's also some question about the removal of non-native vegetation, which was said one way in front of the Conservation Commission and is said the opposite way in the conservation restriction. That's easy to fix as well.
So, I mean, in my assumption is that when the special permits were granted for the project, that stipulation for having that open space and trails kept and maintained was for public access, to George's point. It just seems maybe it's a housekeeping thing, but maybe Melissa can speak to that if it's different from that.
So there is public access, and I think Larry can answer this as to the location of the parking spaces, but there's also parking. And this is the form that is approved by, this is a standard form that's approved by the EOEEA. And it gives the town the restriction, and it allows for the use of the trails. The purpose is to preserve open space, and to provide trails within the premises.
So it is a landlocked trail, meaning that it doesn't connect any of the other trails. I'm not quite sure how much use. We're not opposed to the town coming in, or town residents coming in, utilizing the walking path. I don't know how practical it's going to be, but we're not opposed to it. And there is parking. There is guest parking. There are 6 guest parking spaces throughout the community, and the road is wide enough that somebody could park on the side of the road without interfering with two-way traffic. So if you would like us to add the language that it's open to the public, we would not be opposed to that.
I mean, I think it would just help clarify for
Page
members
3,
of
you have a statement of purposes. This is in the conservation.
I'm sorry, George.
I didn't catch that, George. Could you say that again?
Residents of the housing there, you could just insert in residents of Hamilton.
Right.
That would fix it. It's very simple.
Yeah. So
and about the removal of non-native vegetation, you said you would come before the Conservation Commission, but the conservation restriction says you can do that without coming before us. So it's just shifting that one phrase into the list of things that you do have to come to the Conservation Commission for. That's on page 8.
We have to,
That takes care of it, as far as I'm concerned.
So,
there's actually a conservation restriction on the property, so we're subject to that.
Could you say that again, Melissa? I'm sorry.
We are subject to a order of conditions on the property. So we can't, there's certain acts that we cannot do within
And that would include the non-native species removal, and you'd have to go to CONSCOM for that. Is that correct?
Mhm.
So George, are you okay with that, or would you like that language saying specifically? I mean, it seems like it's covered.
Well, I would think that having the conservation restriction doesn't eliminate the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission over wetlands and the 100-foot buffer. If that's true, then we still have the necessary oversight.
Right. It seems
what
like
the conservation restriction says. The conservation restriction would be in contradiction to that right.
We're subject to the landscape plan that was approved as part of the approval process. So there was a level of review by all boards, including the Conservation Commission at the time the project was approved.
I understand that. I'm just saying that the conservation restriction conflicts with what you said before the Conservation Commission.
All right, I can speak
with what you're saying now, and I would like it fixed.
Okay, I can speak with the this is the standard form for conservation restrictions that I have been presented with and requested to have signed. But everything that we do is in the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. So it's my belief and that we are subject to the Conservation Commission.
So if I'm understanding correctly, George has an issue with what was said at the CONSCOM meeting versus what's in the document. And you are saying that what's in the document is basically the document is saying that the Conservation Commission still has jurisdiction over the native species, non-native species, etc. So you would have to go to them irregardless of what the language is in the document.
Yes, because we're subject. I'm just looking for that certain language that we're still subject to the approvals, and the approvals include the order of conditions.
Okay.
But is there something in the order of conditions that conflicts with what you're trying to do? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is the landscape plan that was approved did they miss something? And we're not taking out native or non. Is that what the issue is here, George?
It's not clear. I don't have a copy of the order of conditions in front of me. I know Bert looked into it.
So
basically he said that there was no obligation when this came before the planning board to provide public access.
They already agreed to change the public access thing. We're just talking about the vegetative species.
Section B.
Well, the issue is whether we still have jurisdiction no matter what the conservation restriction says. And that's not an issue I can decide. Maybe Bert knows the answer. Maybe town council will have to answer that. I don't know. But the conservation restriction, I mean, if we accept it, you could interpret that as meaning that it overrides any jurisdiction in the future that we might try to impose.
I'd like to make
We've already given approval by approving the conservation restriction. We've given approval for whatever they want to do in the wetlands, and we don't have anything to say about it.
So I would like to make a clarification that we are granting the town the conservation restriction, and that we reserve the right to do those activities in section B, which encompass pages 4 through 6, I believe it is, only if they do not impair the conservation values or the purposes of the CR. So we are agreeing to do a CR on the property, that the property will be basically valued as conservation property. So anything that we do cannot go against what a conservation value is, which is defined within the document, or the purposes of this document.
Right.
So what you're saying is that the
Only a
conservation
reservation.
restriction doesn't override the commission's jurisdiction.
No, this comes after any of the approvals and any and recorded. It's been recorded or will be recorded after the order of conditions and all the approvals. So the conservation restriction in this property is subject to all that.
Right. Still pending, right? So I guess for me, I think the change in the language with the public access, which it seems like it's just a housekeeping thing, that would satisfy me on this. And, you know, I read the document, but I didn't study it today. But I think if you're saying, Melissa, that the CONSCOM still has jurisdiction over any non-native species and stuff like that, and you still have to go before them, I'm okay with it. And I'd like to hear from anybody else on the board that has any questions or comments.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment about where specifically the language should be changed to enable use of the open space by the residents of Hamilton. So it's on page 3, paragraph that begins, grantor and grantee acknowledge. The approvals require the placement of a perpetual restriction enforceable by the grantee, the town, on the premises that limits its use to passive recreation as follows, and then just edit bullet number 2, providing trails for residents of the town of Hamilton within the premises. And I think that would be just super.
We could arrange that to be done.
Thanks, Larry.
Otherwise, I think it's a great CR, and I think it'll be a benefit for the town. So thank you very much for everybody who worked on it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a nice little spot of open space there next to the development. So
Yeah, and certainly I understand that it's not a Sagamore Hill, but I think the principle is important, that when the town has a conservation restriction, it should indeed be open to residents of the town when there's any possibility of trails, and here there are. So thank you.
So
thanks, Rosie.
Melissa, did you have something to add to that? I saw you kind of raise your finger before, but I don't know if it's mute now or.
No, I think it's not.
Okay. So then I'll entertain a motion, and I would suggest that whoever makes the motion add, obviously the language change and approval by council.
I'll let Rosie do that.
Me too.
Okay, all right, so let's see. I move that the Board of Selectmen approve with edits a conservation restriction granted by Canterbrook Capital LLC to the town of Hamilton. And so there'll be 2 edits, specifically, as I just stated, page 3, a paragraph that begins with grantor and grantee acknowledge. Bullet point number 2, providing trails for residents of Hamilton within the premises for the purposes of. And then George, and then I'm a little lost as to what I should say about George's concern. I'm sorry that George.
I don't think
would you
we
help
need to
me?
say anything. I think that it's
I
covered.
don't think we need to. I think we've got it covered. So.
Okay.
Just one edit.
Okay, so
One edit.
that's my motion.
All right. So Darcy, did you second it?
I did second it.
All right. So roll call vote. We'll start with you, Darcy.
Darcy Dale, aye.
Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Jamie.
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Bill.
William Olson, aye.
And myself, aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much for joining us, Larry and Melissa, and let's sell all
George.
the rest of those units.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is the goal.
I do have one question, if I may. Just procedurally, how do you want me to obtain signature pages?
I was gonna do. You jumped all over me there, Melissa. I was gonna say, if Melissa, if you can submit to me by email as your earliest, a clean copy with the edits as recommended. I'll have the printed out and ready, and we'll notify the board when council's approved, and you guys can come in and sign it, and then we'll get it back to you signed.
Okay. Thank you.
Generally, the board's been very good, especially during now. They don't have anywhere else to be. They come by the town hall just to say hi and sign documents for us all the time. So it should be pretty quick. All
This
right.
has to be notarized, that's all.
So I had a question about that. The town council, I mean, the board of selectmen's vote, public record, you need the signatures to be notarized as well?
Usually I do it at a meeting. So
All right, well, we'll have the town clerk or some other notary in the building. It's just where we're gonna leave it in the office for them to come in and sign. It's just gonna have to run a notary back and forth for them. So that's all. Okay.
Can I serve as a notary? I'm a notary, or would that not be allowed?
I'm going to ask our town council to chime in on that. I don't know if that's
Okay.
right for him to serve as the notary for the rest of you.
Okay.
I can also meet somebody if it comes out, if it's needed. So,
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we can figure that all out.
Okay.
all right.
You know.
Thank
All
you.
right.
And I want to thank George too for all your thoughtful insight on
Yes, George, thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
I'm glad
All
it
right.
went this way.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks.
Yeah, thank
thank you,
you.
Larry. Thanks. Keep up the good work down there.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
And up next, we have the special municipal employee designation discussion and vote. You should have all received in your packets, I think, Tom's comments on this, and we've got Anna here as well, who's requested this on the agenda to kind of clear up our housekeeping of designating special municipal employees. Joe, who do you want to kick this discussion off?
Well, since Anna brought it to our attention, we ask Anna to chime in with how she came across this oversight.
All right, give us some background, Anna.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So when I was doing my onboarding and ethics training, the question of, as a school committee member, who is my employer came up. Word on the street had been that the school committee somehow or another was not employed by either town, but that struck me as incorrect. So upon digging into it, state ethics guidelines are pretty clear that we are actually subject to jurisdiction of both towns. We're considered employees of both municipalities. And this is true of all of the joint boards. So school committee, cultural council, library trustees, and recreation committee are, I think, at present the existing by-town commissions. So I reached out to the state ethics hotline to sort of get clarification, as well as the district's council. And then really the question became, well, yes, we think you are special. And I said, but I was advised by both state ethics and the district council to say, okay, great. You should get documentation of that because it has a very different meaning if you're special versus regular. Diane Bucco was able to very easily put her hands on a list of Wenham town employees that were all designated as special in 2008. But neither the state ethics attorney or Sharon George, our clerk, or I reached out to Bill Bowler as well to find out if Hamilton had done the same. And the unanimous opinion of all of those folks is that we have not. So I think it's really just a procedural issue, whereby right now we have a number of employees who are considered regular by the town of Hamilton and special by the town of Wenham. But it also has a potential conflict for employees who are not on the joint board. So for example, just hypothetically, David Smith, who's the chair of our Board of Health, who is also on the Affordable Housing Trust, at present, neither one of those positions has been designated as special. Therefore, technically, he's in accidental sort of an ethics violation. The same could be true of Brian Stein and Rick Mitchell. The same could be true of Marnie, who's now on planning board, which is special, but Affordable Housing Trust is not. Michelle Horrigan and Michelle Bailey, both on the school committee, also have this sort of strange gray area. So I've asked it to be corrected sort of as a matter of process. Most towns with populations less than 10,000 people have done this, kind of for exactly this reason. We're a small population and a lot of people wear multiple hats, which is a great thing for us. But legally, ethically, it does present some issues. So by
Anna,
statute,
did you know that the on-call fire department force, they're considered special municipal employees?
But I think that one's by statute. There are a few that are by statute. So on-call fire is one. Housing authority is another. The select board is another. So all of you are considered special by statute. But at present, and maybe Tom can weigh in more definitively, but at present, it seems like the only other special town employees that are not made so by statute are the planning board and the conservation commission. all other board positions within the town of Hamilton are not considered special, and therefore that applies to all those other boards as well as anyone on a joint board. So I've asked that that be corrected so that all of the people who serve on multiple boards are not accidentally creating an ethical conflict for themselves.
Right. So then now I'll ask Tom to weigh in on this, and then also with our discussion kind of is centralized around the school committee right now. But then I'll ask Tom to add to that any other boards or committees that we should also do this housekeeping with.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in response to the emails that I received through Joe, I took a look into this issue. So I didn't compile a list of what positions, if any, have been designated already by the town as special municipal employees. I look strictly at this regional school committee issue. So, and essentially, it's fairly common in most communities for unpaid board members to be designated as special municipal employees. And basically, it has two real kind of main, there's two main provisions of the State Ethics Commission, of the State Ethics Law, Chapter 268A, that apply less strictly to special municipal employees. The first is Section 17, and essentially it allows special municipal employees to appear before other boards or committees on behalf of private or other organizations without violating the conflict of interest law. So the most common time you see this is, for example, if, say, there's a Conservation Commission member who is an attorney or who is an engineer, and in order for that person may represent and get paid to represent other parties before, say, like the Planning Board or the Zoning Board of Appeals, and otherwise they would be in conflict under the provisions of the conflict of interest law. So it essentially allows people to serve as board members, to give the town essentially their expertise, and to be able to participate in town government without essentially preventing them from making a living. Right. And that's generally kind of the gist of what the designation as a special municipal employee has under Section 17. The second provision that is also less restrictively applied is Section 20, which deals with having, multiple contracts with the town, or if you work for a business that has a contract with the town. So those are kind of really the two main ones that apply. So, for example, and even if you're not paid, for example, if you're a member of a member of the school committee, for example, but you want to appear on behalf of another organization before a different town committee, then technically, even if you're not necessarily paid by that town committee and your position as a school committee member is unpaid, then you would technically be in conflict. You'd have a conflict of interest issue there. So those are really the kind of main reasons why the designation exists, as in order to allow people, again, to serve in town government without having to either prevent them from making a living or otherwise participate on behalf of other organizations that are unrelated to the specific committee on which they serve.
Gotcha. So I think it seems like the right thing to do to me, and it seems like housekeeping. And then I would say tonight seems solely focused on the school committee. And then I'd like to also put Joe and Tom on it, maybe to see what other committees we need to do this with, because, if we do it to one, we should figure it out for all so that we're not in any conflict of interest or ethics with any of our other members and committees. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I would entertain a motion to, and forgive me if I get it wrong, but to designate the Hamilton Wenham School District for special municipal employee.
To the Hamilton Regional District School Committee as special municipal employees.
Right.
So moved.
You're great at that, Darcy.
Darcy, killing me. It's awesome.
You got a second?
I second that.
Okay. Any other discussion from anybody?
I'll just offer this as a little bit of clues if it's helpful to Joe and Tom's research. When I was talking to the state ethics attorney, she looked it up in their database to see what other votes they had on file to try to answer the question of who else might be at some point. We don't really know.
Right.
She pointed me to 3 specific votes, which are October of 63, April of 87, and September of 2005. If it would be helpful, I could email you those exact dates if that would be of use at all.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I mean, she seemed to indicate that typically people do file it with them, but she also made a big shining star saying this list may be incomplete and there may have been other votes taken at some other time in Hamilton's past that were not forwarded to the state ethics. So I do think procedurally, whatever happens next, they like to know about it so that in 30 years time, when someone searches again, they can say, oh, on July 13th, 2020, the state of Hamilton took a vote. So if that's helpful, I'll email you those exact dates and what she said.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thanks, Anna.
Right. And I think the other thing we'll want to definitely take a look at as well is to see what positions in the town of Wenham have been designated, particularly as it relates to any joint boards and committees, because Anna had indicated for any joint boards or committees, it requires a vote of both communities in order to be considered a special municipal employee. So if one does it, but the other doesn't, then technically you're not a special.
Right. And that's kind of the situation with our school committee at the moment, right? Because Wenham's already done it in 2008 or 5 or something like that.
They actually took 2 votes. I think I forwarded that to Joe and to you as well. They took 1 vote on March 11th, 2008 that included 7 different positions. And then on July 1st, 2008, they designated another, looks like 28 more after that. Then on 2016, 1 more, and 2017, another. So again, if that's helpful to document and research, Tom, if you don't have it, I have that, and that came straight from Diane Bucco last week when I was.
Yes, yeah, I think I did see that. So we'll just need to confirm with her that that's the complete list.
Okay, perfect. So we've got a motion, we've got a second. We'll do some roll call. We'll start with Darcy.
Darcy Dale, aye.
Rosie?
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Jamie?
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Bill?
William Olson, aye.
And Sean Farrell, aye. All right.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, thanks, Anna.
I accidentally found a rabbit hole. I didn't go looking for it, but I'm glad that we've resolved it. So thank you. And I'll email Joe and Tom with those dates and everything, and I'll pass on everything I've learned. So thank you.
Perfect. Then so obviously look at an upcoming agenda sometime for some other designation of municipal employees. And next we have the flag raising policy review and discussion. Joe sent that out, or Pat sent it out in our packets. And we've borrowed most of it from another community and hybrided it to our own, which is always a good practice, and modified it to ours.
Well, it's nice to know when I'm borrowing. I know that it's already been vetted by other council and other communities, so it's usually we're in pretty good shape, even if we want to make some alterations. Your town board of selectmen policy on adopted policy says that you need to do this over the course of 2 meetings. So I just brought this up because we had a request recently by some residents, multiple residents, to hang the unity flag in the month of June. And we did that, and we were very happy to do that. But as I did it, and as I kind of talked to some of my counterparts around the North Shore, we realized that by doing so, we could create a kind of a situation where people might think that the town is allowing the flagpole to be used as a form of free speech, or that we would be opening ourselves to other groups that maybe we don't want to hang their flags on the town flagpole. So
unintended consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. So technically, I think that door was probably already open because in the past the town has hung the POW, MIA POW flag below the. So you could say that door was open quite some time ago. But just wanting to close the door, I thought that I'd take first cut at a first draft of a flag policy from my friend, as I stole it from Jason Sullivan, Marblehead, and let you guys take up the subject, talk about it a little bit. Maybe hopefully tonight vote on a moratorium on third-party flag raisings until the policy is adopted, so that if anybody comes in tomorrow with an unsettling flag request, then we can put them off for the time being. So just my idea.
So I guess if you have read it, if you have any comments on it, and we'll have it on our next agenda for a vote, because we usually have, and this is more for Jamie's knowledge, that we typically, when we have any new policies come before us, we have a first reading on one meeting, and then typically the following meeting will have a follow-up and a vote on it. So so if anybody's read it, if they want to discuss anything, and if you haven't read it or you don't feel like discussing it tonight, please email Joe any changes or comments on it, and we'll get them back out before next meeting and make a vote on it.
Yeah, I want to take some time to go through it, but
Yeah,
no, it makes sense, but I probably need a little bit of time to go through it.
Yeah, I kind of gave it a first blush today and read through it, and it seems pretty straightforward. You know, we reserve the right to refuse anything we don't want to put up there. It's not a full public access to it. So,
But then, okay, just that statement that you just made, Sean, that's a political statement, and that's one of the concerns that I have, right? That we as a town, who gave us the right to decide what group of people should be able to put up a flag or not? I just worry about it opening a can of worms, is my concern.
all right. So then I would say, Rosie, really read through it and make some comments and stuff like that, and we'll have Tom and all of us will discuss it at the next meeting. I think that's great.
Yeah,
Really look forward to it.
I would like to really ponder it some more and understand what it means. I mean, things always sound very simple, but I think it's something that we should really think about and discuss in detail. So thanks, John, for the opportunity.
Anybody else comments? Okay, so read through it, dissect it, make some comments or suggestions on it, and get them back to Joe. And then I'll.
Are you going to do that right
if
now?
you want to entertain a motion on a moratorium until we approve our policy, I would entertain it.
Yes, so moved.
Second.
Okay. Second by Darcy. Roll call. We'll start with Darcy.
Darcy Dale, aye.
Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Jamie.
Jamie Knutson, aye.
Bill.
William Olson, aye.
And myself, Sean Farrell, aye. All right. And last on our agenda is town meeting recap and discussion. We kind of discussed a little bit and touched on it when Joe was on vacation, but I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit more, and maybe it can even lead into a little bit of future STM, ATM dates, and maybe Joe can share a little bit about some things that we found out about ATM and STM dates.
Before we do that, I just want to ask, does anybody feel we need to keep Tom on right now? He's coming to us from a meeting earlier this evening with another town. If you don't have anything for him, I'd like to let him go.
Free to go, Tom. You're free.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
All right. Well, thank you. Have a nice night. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks, Joe. So maybe Joe, if you want to lead off just a thing about the dates, and we'll have it on our next agenda or so to talk about dates, but I just wanted to kind of start the dialogue about it.
Yeah. So a couple things to keep in mind. I'll start with the easiest one. Next annual town meeting is the first, by statute in the town of Hamilton, by bylaw, the town of Hamilton, the first Saturday in the month of April is designated as the town meeting date, the annual town meeting. And the first Saturday in the month of April next year is also Holy Saturday. So if the board, and I will look into what we need to do, but if the board wants to initiate a discussion about potentially changing that or not, I don't know if you don't care about Holy Saturday or not, it's up to you. But I just want to bring that to your attention. It was raised to us by the school committee, actually. So I wanted you to be aware of that. You may want to consider changing the date. And with special town meeting, I think there are a lot of different things in play, particularly there's concerns, obviously, about a potential resurgence of COVID and people being asked to shelter at home for a while again sometime in the fall. We also have the fact that the town hall and the town clerk's office is going to be tied up with early voting in the presidential election for 2 weeks. So that kind of takes the middle 2 weeks of October out of play for you. We'd like you probably at the next meeting to agree on a special time meeting date so we can go ahead and start organizing the calendar and the warrant for that. I've already asked the department heads to consider or not to consider, but to forward me both the items that we took off of the annual warrant because of the coronavirus and anything new that's come up that we want to try to address at the special, so we can have a good list and know where we're going pretty quickly once you set a date. I had a little bit of conversation with some of our department heads, and particularly the town clerk, given some of the restrictions in October. If the board wants to consider Saturdays, I'd be inclined to recommend that you consider Saturday, November 3rd.
November 3rd?
Saturday, November 3rd. We won't really be able to do much at the beginning of October because we won't be ready with free cash certifications and things like that. So any free cash votes that might need to be taken wouldn't be able to be taken. So those would fall off the warrant altogether and be carried all the way to the annual town meeting if we waited to do that. Or if we try to do it early. We're going to lose the middle 2 weeks, which is where you've been the last couple of years. And if we go much beyond the first week in November, the folks that I'm hearing from are saying that mid-late November timeframe might be the time of the year where people might start to see a resurgence. We might be worried about, having to ask people to stay home more often or something like that. And I do not relish the idea of trying to do an outdoor town meeting in November.
Oh, I was just going to suggest, can we do an outdoor town meeting and people dress appropriately? They have years.
Yeah, maybe just for frame of reference, last year's STM was on the 19th of October, and we've typically done it around that time, but we've had a few years we've done it almost into the second week of November. So I think November 3rd is probably our best bet, but we can, think about it more and discuss it. And Joe, as far as ATM with our April 4th, Wenham's typically the same day. We do the morning, they do the afternoon. Have they had any discussions? Have you heard from Anthony?
I know that they know about it. Anthony and I had talked about it briefly when it was first raised to us. It was kind of funny. I was wondering if Michelle Bailey didn't like me or something because I got the email from her on the Sunday night after the annual town meeting. I'm like, oh my God, I just finished one. You already want me to think about next year's? But I followed up on Monday with Anthony and he said, hey, can we talk about this after my town meeting? So they just had their Saturday. I haven't talked to him yet, but he's aware of it. They know. My understanding though is it's easier due to their bylaws in Wenham, it's easier for them to move it than it may be for us. So we should try to get on the same page and try to keep it the same day.
I'd like to try to keep it the same day if we can, because I feel that I've kind of really pushed in the last handful of years to have all of our sports fields closed on that day so we can get as much participation as possible. I know it doesn't affect all the travel leagues and stuff like that, and people still choose that over town meetings sometimes, but I'd like to be able to only have those fields closed for one day instead of 2 weekends. It makes it more inconvenience for everyone. So, and maybe if we can work with them.
If we put the 10 on the field again, they won't be able to play any sports.
Right.
Oh, guys, as much as I know people enjoyed it, it was a unique, fun kind of thing to pull off, but I'm hoping we don't have to do that again.
I think the school gym, high school gym is, might be, we talked about it, doing it, and I think that might be the next best opportunity because we could fit enough people in there.
Yeah, I was actually already thinking if you go with November 3rd, I may ask the district if we can do it in the gym instead of the auditorium. It's just bigger. There's more air. Yeah. We open up some windows and doors and get some. I don't want to create too much noise with fans, but if we can create some additional airflow, it might just make people feel a little bit better if we've got them coming indoors in November. So.
Right, and I wonder what the capacity we could do. Maybe if we get some dimensions from the district of the gym and do some calculations on distancing. And
could they also do like an overflow room?
Yeah, we do the overflow room in the middle school in the cafeteria or something.
Cafeteria or the auditorium or absolutely.
Yeah, I think the auditorium is more comfortable seating wise.
It's so
just to whine about
it's hard
that.
They might stay longer, Rosie. Let's get them in and out.
There you go.
Put them on the hard seats. They might come in, vote our agenda, and move on. Let's.
Well, but I think we didn't really talk about the good news is other than Wenham, everything passed at the Wenham. So now we have a budget's approved. So now people can get to work and now we can start working on next year. So that was a good sign. Clickers for So
I was
click,
gonna
you're
say,
talking
we'll
about the,
circle back to kind of our last town meeting here, and Bill's leading right into it with the clicker. So go ahead, Bill.
yeah, I was gonna say, so I mean, it was for the 5.5 minutes that were a success, but you know, and I wouldn't change things up. To have 550 people there was better than having the clickers work. So I think that's great, but we just need to decide what makes sense for next time. I mean, they've offered to bring them again for free, but I mean, I'm not sure what that offer really stands now.
I just
So I
think
think
we pull the trigger on it.
I think we invest
purchase
and
them
make
like we
that.
talked
So we just need to decide how many, and we need to say, hey, it's worth the investment to buy maybe 400 or 500. If we get more than that, then we're gonna have to have backup, because I don't know if we really want to spend. We don't have that many. I think they're $20 a piece or something like that. So we just got to figure out.
$36. I had them send me an estimate just so I know the ballpark and know what kind of procurement we're going to have to go through. Bill, I know you looked into this. You've identified the other companies that work in this space. So they're $36 each. So at 1,000, we were looking at $36,000.
Could we have an adopt a clicker program?
And how about sharing them with Wenham? Would they be interested in sharing them?
If we had 1,000, you could, because it's easier to do it. It's when we have 200 or 300, you may not be able to get them to them quick enough.
Yeah, if we split the cost of 1,000 with them, then they could have 500. We'd have 500, and then if we run it over, they just need to run 100 up the street to us or something. That'd be way easier.
I think that'd be a great idea. I mean, because I think in all my kind of my my data at town meetings, when I'm furiously writing down the time that everybody talks and the vote counts and how long that takes and everything, every town meeting that I've mapped it shaves out at the minimal 45 minutes, but typically almost an hour and a half of vote counting.
It's so boring too, and I'm not even sure that it's so accurate, really, because people are turning around and talking.
Right.
To
I think all of our and I'm forgetting the word, all of our tellers, they're doing their best, but sometimes you have two tellers for one section. One says, I got 29, well, I got 30, and it just gets rid of all that gray area, if there is any, in a vote. And
I think even with the test vote we had, I think one person said it wasn't working. It was a battery thing. So we had 400 out there and one battery. So, I mean, I think, we're going to have those issues, but I think they're going to be very minimal. I think we're going to be able to work through them very quickly. So
yep, I think it's really, really a worthwhile
Plus
investment.
it makes it more anonymous for people. You don't feel that pressure from your neighbor to vote the same as them. If you live on the same street and you're worried about how they think you're going to perceive something, you just vote the way you feel. So I think
I like that about it too.
Yep.
So I would say, Joe, if you could talk to Anthony and see what he thinks about splitting 1,000 clickers, and also, what else was I going to say? Maybe we could pull some data from our town clerk to see kind of I would say two things: our average attendance, and then our highest attendance, and kind of shoot for that. I think 1,000 is probably good. But if we had some data on, I think the average for ATM is usually about 225 to 350 is about the average, and fall town meeting is about 125, 150, somewhere in there. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that's what it is.
So you guys told me that right before the special, and I went and made arrangements to have room for 150 people and 400 clickers. So that didn't work so well for me.
No.
Watch
so don't listen to me. But if we could actually get actual data instead of me just speculating.
No, but the AV setup, the guys did a great job. It was one of the best.
Yeah, they did a good job.
There was the best screens and clarity and everything. Everything just worked out. I mean, there was for the stress that we had, I thought it went off without a hitch. So thank you, Joe, and all the team. We talked about it last time when you were on vacation, but
and the DPW, they did a wonderful job. That tent was phenomenally erected.
Everybody
did.
did.
Great.
Darcy's favorite group, the firefighters, ran out and got us more water so that nobody passed out. I mean,
fabulous.
And then we had one woman fall in a chair, and it was like 5 people were running to her to make sure she was okay, which was, I thought somebody had passed out from the heat. Her chair just broke. So that was great. I thought it shows the level of employee you have here in town. I think that's important to recognize. And people, I think, unfortunately, oftentimes overlook the quality of the staff we have across all of our departments, really. And they all just jumped in and pitched in and did the best that they could to have that thing come off without a hitch. Russ Stevens using his lights to get Marissa and Michelle down to town hall to get red paper when we had to get rid of I think he was back before I turned around. I was like, how did you guys go down there and get back so fast? So it's.
I think kind of all things considered, it went off only with a few hitches, but everyone did a really great job. And I think the only thing that I would add, not a negative, but just a comment and maybe a future, I don't know if it's a policy or just a way, is that when we have someone on a board or committee that wants to voice an opposing view, that they move from, and we didn't really have tables this time, but move from the front where they're at a table as a board member to the kind of public microphone instead of the kind of board microphone, just so you're really making that separation of being a board member and a private citizen really clear for everybody. And then, asking that board member to say, I'm speaking as a private citizen, with whether it be opposing view or not, that, it's just very clear for everybody. Because I know, if I'm on the board and I start speaking, most people are thinking that I'm speaking as a board member. So just so we can make that super clear to everybody, I think it would really help with how people perceive things. But that's it. Other than that, I think everything went smoothly, as smooth as it could, really, other than the clickers and COVID and everything.
The heat.
And the heat and
the chairs.
And the chairs.
Even without the clickers, we were done in 3 hours, which I think is tremendous. I think that's a great job. We did our best to get the warrant size down to a manageable level and kind of limit things that weren't necessary or overly controversial. But 3 hours, that was pretty good.
Yeah. Jamie, do you have any comments, being kind of on the other side of the fence now, as far as what you saw happen or what you thought we could improve?
Well, I definitely had a different perspective than you guys. Not disagreeing with you. I just meant I was way in the back. So yeah, I agree that the PA system was great, because I thought, wow, I'm really far away here, trying to get in I started out in the heat and moved to the shade, but I could hear everything. Couldn't see anything under the tent, but so yeah, that part was all good. And I second a lot of the things that you all said. Definitely think the clickers would be great if we had enough. I don't know if there's a way to get people checked in quicker. Because
that's a good point. Yeah.
There was a long line.
There was a line.
Yeah, that's a good
We have
point.
no tables, but I think because of the COVID danger, they had reduced everything, the fewer tables, fewer poll workers. So that's.
Wenham started checking people in an hour and a half before. So that's what they did. So Wenham opened up at 7:30 check-in. So that's kind of how, they sort of learned from us. So that's what they did. They opened up at 7:30 to check in.
And if we were forced to, actually, we'll probably look at doing something like that again in the future if we can.
I think to Jamie's point,
8:30, whatever it is,
that if we are in these same circumstances, which it seems like most likely we will be, that we change our check-in time for town meeting, because we really didn't start until almost 9:30.
Yeah, like half an hour. Yeah.
And then we kind of pause again, and we're still waiting for, there's like 90 people in line or more trying to get in, even then still. So I think if we were really conscious of that wait time and everyone getting in, and because typically I think when we come in, there's 2 people for each district, right? When we come in, typically, am I wrong on that?
Usually, yep.
Or right, and so this time was really only a couple of people checking everybody in. So
yeah, their hands full.
right. So if we are more efficient, or we have more people, or a longer time, or kind of a combination of all those things, that will be a lot smoother.
We did have a little bit of a challenge getting enough people to work and out. There was great, trepidation among some folks who typically volunteer in that capacity or work in that capacity for the clerk's office. We had to kind of dig deep. I think Michelle Lee's 3 daughters all worked for Sharon this time. Normally, that's all staffed from local residents. Those residents just didn't feel comfortable coming out and putting themselves in a position of having to interact with several hundred people in close space. So we'll have to keep that in mind. We might need to open earlier. I will say the other thing that Wenham learned from us was tent size. Our tent was 80 by 120 80 square feet, 80 feet by 120 feet. And we had room under the tent for a little over 150 people in socially distanced chairs. Wenham's tent was 120 by 180. They had chairs for over 370 people under the tent. So
how many people showed up?
Over 400.
400.
They had over 400. I joked with Anthony that he was compensating for something by getting a bigger tent than what Hamilton's, but he took it in good stride. He got all his people in the shade, so he was happy with that at the end of the day.
Yeah, it was a hot day.
I think that, going back to the checking in thing, now that we're cognizant of the time it takes, and then it'll be Corinne kind of setting up that checking in. If we make sure that she's aware that she can reach out to us, and we can try and help find some people to help check people in beforehand if we do have people that are worried about exposure and stuff like that, because we typically use our poll workers and stuff like that for that. Is that correct? Or is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Typically our poll workers have helped
So
out there. So.
is there any do they have to be any special designee to check people in?
No, they just have to get sworn in by the clerk to do the duties. She'll run a training for them. That's what Sharon did for Michelle's daughters and the other folks that she brought in. We'll do the same thing.
I mean, that seems simple enough for people that are willing to volunteer for that hour or so before the meeting and do that. That'd be great. Any other points, discussion, comments?
I'm just gonna, if we're gonna talk about, just before we stop talking about the fall town meeting, but it's, not to stress people, it's only 16 weeks away, right? And which means we only have 7 meetings and 3 of them are over the summertime. So, so it would make sense maybe if we can, in 2 weeks, just go through the articles that we took off of, at least we can start to go through the articles that we know are going to be on it.
Yeah, I've already kind of tasked Joe with that in our discussions this week, to kind of put everything together, and he's got his department heads kind of filling in the blanks.
Did someone say that it was November 3rd?
Yes.
Because isn't that the election day for the national presidential election?
It's a Tuesday, whatever the Tuesday is going to be.
I think it's the
next
Tuesday.
It's not. You're right. It's not November 3rd.
What's the first November? I thought it was the 3rd. I forgot
it's the 31st. It's the 31st or the 7th.
Yeah, 31st or the 7th. You're right. Election is the 3rd.
You're right. Yes, you're right, Darcy.
Okay, sorry. Thank you for correcting me, Darcy. I'm sorry about that.
I'm perpetuating Joe's lies, I guess, when I'm repeating his dates. Sorry.
So the 7th is what we're talking about.
We're talking about the 7th, yeah.
Or the 31st of October, which is
Halloween.
Halloween's not a good date. Yeah.
You will get a lot of people participating on Halloween.
So
maybe if we gave candy out, who knows? So the 7th, it seems.
Come in costume, you get to vote twice.
Come in costume.
So the 7th is thanks for figuring that out, Darcy.
Thank you, Darcy.
We've all been perpetuating Joe's lies.
And it'll be good because the election will be over by then, right? So probably better to be than before. Don't be as politically charged as before the election. So,
or
they'll be just exhausted.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a motion?
You may make a motion. Actually, before you make that special motion, I'll just ask if anybody has any new business they want to bring up, or at any point you have any business or anything you want on the agenda, feel free to email me or call me or whatever. Are
you going to continue Jeff's, not to put you on the spot, but Jeff sort of had the Monday agenda. Are you gonna do a different thing, or are you gonna do the same way, or how?
Great question. I haven't even thought about that yet. Okay. So let me think about it, and Bill, you and I are talking. We'll talk as a board about kind of agenda setting and stuff like that. But please email me or call me, text me, whatever, if you have any ideas for things on the agenda. And with that, does anybody have any new business?
Not right this moment.
Okay. All right. So
I
start here, wherever you are.
I make a motion that we adjourn for the evening.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, we'll start with Darcy.
Darcy Dale, aye.
Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Bill.
William Olson, aye.
Jamie.
Jamie Knutson, aye.
And myself, aye. Thanks, everyone. Good meeting tonight.
Thank you, everybody.